I used to really suck at drawing anatomy, but that wasn't until I learned some very valuable tips that made my drawings just suck less. So today I will be sharing what those tips are. To those of you who are new to this channel, hi, I'm Janelle and I am a concept artist and illustrator, and I too used to be in your exact position at sucking drawing anatomy. Like, look at this old character design. She looks like a freaking alien. Like, her legs are way too long and her head is just too small. But I've improved, okay? Like, look at this recent model sheet that I made. I now suck less at drawing anatomy, okay? We got proof. And you too can suck less by hitting the like button and watching these game changer tips that I'll be sharing with y'all. You're welcome. Okay, so the very first tip that I have is this. It's called the bean. And it's a quick way to understanding and drawing the human torso. The key to drawing a really good pose lies in the torso. And that's just because all the limbs attach to the torso. In other words, all the movement starts at the torso. So for all those artists that give the tips of just drawing a singular gesture line out here playing 2D chess, we're all over here playing 4D chess with our beans because our torsos actually look like torsos. Okay, so drawing a bean is very simple. So to start off, I am drawing on top of this reference layer. And I like to start out with 2 circles, one for the chest and one for the tummy crotch area. And then I follow the motion of the body, one long curved line. And on the other side, you can see that it's squished. And I like to draw some rolls in here, cause let's be honest, everyone has them. And to complete the bean, I just close the top and the bottom. Easy peasy. You can do this with any reference image and just draw on top. It will help you get the hang of drawing a bean for the torso, and you will better understand how the torso moves. It rotates. Once you finish your bean, you can add the limbs just by drawing on top again. And this exercise will help you understand the placement as well as how the limbs move according to the torso. Okay, so now we're moving on to the big leagues. We're ready to play some ball. Gesture freaking drawing. Oh yeah, baby. Because every experienced artist knows that the fastest way to improve your anatomy is by drawing a crap ton of gestures. And now that you have learned this 4D bean move, you can now expertly draw torsos. You're welcome. When I am gesture drawing from reference, I like to use this site called Sketch Daily. So for the first pose, I am starting with the bean, drawing the torso, and the torso in the reference is twisted, so I'm trying to emulate that twist with the big curve in the front and by adding lines on the chest as well as the back to show the middle so that you can actually see an indication of the torso twisting. Next, I draw the head and then the legs and finally the arms. Moving on to another pose, drawing the bean again for the torso, and this time I'm drawing in the arms first, followed by the legs, and finally the head. So you can see that the only thing that really matters is getting the torso right at the very beginning, because then you can just add the limbs and the head. And you won't have to worry about guessing of where the limbs go or having a slanted, awkward pose because your torso looks off. Okay, my second tip for drawing anatomy is drawing circular lines. Let me show you. So once I finish drawing my figure, I like to add circular lines to indicate where the joints are. And it's also helpful in indicating foreshortening because the further away a limb is, the more round and circular the lines are. And another great thing about using circular lines is that it will help you figure out how to place the clothing on top. For example, if the perspective is slightly down, the circular lines will also be curved down. So you'd want the top of the pants to also curve to fit the body. But if you draw the bottom of the pants the opposite curve, it will just look off because now you've got 2 different perspectives and it's just gonna look whack. And for my third tip of drawing better anatomy, negative space. So while you are drawing from your reference, it's important to keep in mind the areas that have no body parts that are just empty space. Recognizing this negative space will help you see whether or not your drawing is off compared to the reference. This will help your artistic eye to be able to see better so you can better critique your work and burn it to the ground so that you can improve faster. Okay, so now we're moving on to drawing from our own knowledge and imagination. But in order to do that, there are some basic anatomy proportions for both male and female that I think is valuable for you to know. So we're going to start off with female anatomy. So this is the model sheet you guys saw in the beginning of this video, and I'm going to break down the anatomy for you using this sheet as a reference. First things first, the torso. As always, the most important place to start in drawing good anatomy. So for females, they typically have an hourglass shape to their torso, with the waist being smaller than the hips. Now you can easily draw different body types depending on the length of the hips versus the length of the shoulders. So for my character in particular, she has an equal length of shoulders and hips, which is more like a athletic, normal type of build for females. But you can also make a character more curvier by adding some wider hips compared to narrow shoulders. And you can also go the complete opposite route of broad shoulders with narrow hips. She could be like the female version of a gym rat. Moving on to the head, females' jaws are typically on the softer side, and their necks are more on the smaller side compared to males. And that's just because females are naturally smaller and softer. Of course, there are outliers, so draw whatever face and neck you want. For both female and male, the waist, or where the belly button is, are typically in the middle of the shoulders and the hips. And when drawing the arms, the elbow is at the same height as the waist. And the upper arm and lower arm are the same length, with the fingertips reaching to almost mid-thigh. And now for them legs. So the outer part of legs are pretty easy. They just go in and then out and then back in. Nothing too complicated. But with the inside of the legs, it's a little bit more complicated. So from the crotch area to the middle thigh, there's a little bump, and then also from the mid thigh to the knee, and then from the knee to the top of the calf, followed by shooting all the way down straight to the ankle. A lot of artists make the mistake of drawing the outside of the leg the same as the inside of the leg, and that's just wrong, okay? It looks like poo for legs. That's not appealing at all. The arms are also similar in this matter. You don't want to make them look like poo. One thing that helps me not make poo looking limbs is me thinking one side is short while the other side is long. Same thing with the legs. Short, short, long, long. Moving on to the female side. Females have boobs and butts, okay? So make sure you draw those unless you want your character to be flat like me. When drawing the side of a character, there is a common zigzag pattern, starting from the head that is out in front, that goes back into the shoulders, and then forward into the chest, back into the hips, forward into the thighs, back into the calves, and then all the way down into the feet. So if you do this pattern, you'll be golden. So when looking at the legs, you'll notice that the back is more complex than the front. So just keep that in mind while drawing. And finally, to make sure your character isn't leaning too far forward or too far back, you want to make sure that the back, the booty, the calves, and the heels are all aligned. You don't want no wonky characters, okay? Just stick by the rules and you'll do great. Moving on to male anatomy. This is another model sheet that I made, and we are going to start with the torso again. So for males, typically what the most common thing is that they have broad shoulders and smaller hips. And this is just because males just don't got fancy curves like us females do, which means that their features are more angular and sharp and not as appealing and attractive. Sorry, boys. Equal hip and shoulder length makes a male look more boxy. Bigger hips than shoulders makes the male look more feminine. And in this current day's terminology, we would call that a soy boy. And shoulders bigger than hips are typically the male gym rat stereotype. For male limbs, Muscles are typically on the bigger side compared to females, with the same type of anatomy as females. So just think of everything bigger for males. Everything bigger and more angular. Going into detail for the arms, when drawing the lower arms, keep in mind that where the thumb is where the muscle is. And the side of where the pinky is where you have a bone here, that's where your elbow is. And it's a straight line. So that should not be hard to mess up, okay? Thumb, muscle. Pinky, straight line. Moving on to the male side. For males, it's the same type of zigzag pattern as for females. The only difference between the two is that males are not as curvy as females, so they don't really have a butt. It's more flat. Also, they don't have boobs. And everything in general for drawing males is just angular. If there's one thing you take away from this video, it's that the torso is the most important thing to draw correctly. So if you take the time to draw all them beans now, you will thank me. I will see you in the next video.